Welcome to Strong Legends, daily sci-fi stories that fuel your mind. Subscribe and join the legend.
The evening air was thick with the scent of pine and the lingering warmth of a late June sun. I sat on our back porch, an old wooden rocking chair creaking beneath me, while Baxter, my 11-year-old shepherd mix, lounged at my feet. The sky above was a deep indigo scattered with stars beginning to twinkle like distant lanterns. The world felt still as though holding its breath, and I was lost in a quiet reverie when the first flicker appeared. At first I thought it was a meteor, streaking across the horizon, an ember of white-hot brilliance against the dark canvas. But then the light split and twisted into an emerald-green glow, rippling across the tree line with an unnatural shimmer. Baxter's ears shot up, his hindquarters rising in alert. He let out a single low growl that rumbled through his chest, like distant thunder. I turned my gaze toward the woods beyond the yard, where the shadows seemed to dance and stretch. "Baxter," I whispered, sliding down from the rocking chair to crouch beside him. The dog's nose lifted, sniffing the air with sudden interest. There was something about the way his hackles stood, something primal and protective. We'd been together since he was a pup, and I knew him like a brother. If he was uneasy, I should be too. A soft rustle among the ferns alerted me. My heart stuttered. I tightened my grip on the leash clipped to Baxter's collar, though I didn't plan to use it. Baxter would stand his ground. My own pulse thrummed in my ears as I pushed aside the thin curtain that separated the porch from the yard. The moonlight filtered through the branches, casting silvery patterns on the grass. The green glow pulsated, no longer distant, but rippling, just inside the tree line. Then I saw her. She was impossibly small, no taller than Baxter's shoulder, perhaps 9 inches from crown to heel. Her skin glowed with the same emerald hue that danced through the sky, as if she carried a fragment of that strange light in her veins. Her hair floated weightlessly around her head, drifting like wisps of smoke. Every strand seemed to move of its own volition, catching stray moonbeams and reflecting them in prismatic colors. But it was her eyes, large, oval, and violet, that drew me in. They held a collision of emotions: shock, terror, and a desperate longing for help. For a heartbeat, time froze. Baxter's eyes were fixed on her, unblinking, as though he recognized both threat and curiosity in one tiny being. The dog's hackles rippled again, and I felt his excitement and tension in the electric air. He took a cautious step forward, his massive paws bending the grass. With each inch he moved, the alien girl trembled. I stood, calling softly, "Easy, Baxter. It's okay." He hesitated, then lowered himself into a cautious sit, his eyes never leaving the little figure. The girl's lips parted in a silent gasp. A faint melodic trill vibrated from her throat, an odd cooing sound that I could not place. It sounded mournful, like wind sighing through a canyon. She backed into the slender trunk of a Douglas fir, pressing herself against its rough bark. Clutching herself, she glanced from me to Baxter, fear radiating from her every pore. I sensed she believed she had wandered into a den of predators. As she inched farther into the shadows, the green glow faded slightly, but her luminescence remained constant. She was a living prism of light. Setting my feet deliberately on the grass, I raised a hand in a universal gesture of peace, palm open, fingers splayed. "I'm Owen," I said, voice steady, "and this is Baxter. We're not going to hurt you." She tensed, eyes widening even more. I could see the reflection of Baxter's silhouette in her irises, jagged and immense. The dog let out a soft whine, tilting his head as if to say, "I'm listening." I took another step toward her, keeping my hands in view. Slowly, she raised one delicate hand, her fingers elongated and almost translucent. With trembling motion, she pointed at Baxter. Her lips moved, forming a single word that echoed like a whisper. "Dog?" Her voice was soft as fern fronds, carrying a fragile curiosity laced with dread. I nodded. "Yes. Baxter is a dog. He's my friend." She scanned Baxter's powerful frame, taking in his thick fur, his curious muzzle, his cautious stance. Baxter, in turn, lowered his head until his nose was level with her. His warm breath fanned her hair, causing it to ripple like a silken curtain. The alien girl's gaze flicked between Baxter's muzzle and my face, indecision etched across her features. The wind rustled, a soft symphony of leaves whispering in the pines. I felt sweat bead on my upper lip, though a chill ran down my spine. "He won't hurt you," I assured her in a gentle tone. "Would you like to see?" Baxter exhaled a slow huff, and I reached into my pocket for a scrap of jerky I always carried, Baxter's favorite treat. I held it out to him, and Baxter leaped forward, snatching it in a single, precise motion. The dog's eyes then locked back onto the alien girl, and he let out a polite little bark, more of a greeting than a warning. Seeing this, she sagged with relief but still held herself at arm's length. I took a cautious step forward, inviting her to approach. "You can trust him," I murmured. Baxter's tail began to wag, thumping the ground with gentle approval. The creak of his tail against the grass sounded like a tiny drumbeat of hope. The alien girl tilted her head and dipped her lip in contemplation. Then, with a breath that trembled like a leaf in a storm, she stepped forward, her bare feet sinking into the cool grass. Her movements were slow and deliberate, as though every step was a victory over her own fear. When she was just an arm's length from Baxter, I held my breath. She reached out a single hand, slender fingers brushing Baxter's foreleg. The dog snapped his eyes shut, leaning into the touch. I watched her pale, glowing skin against the texture of his fur. One was delicate and luminous, the other rough and warm. The contrast struck me like a revelation. Her hand inched upward, fingertips grazing Baxter's knee. The dog's whole body relaxed, shifting from alert to curious. The alien girl's breathing steadied. I could see tears welling at the corners of her eyes, violet orbs glinting with a mixture of fear and wonder. We stood in silence, three beings from three worlds connected by that single, fragile touch. The wind seemed to hush around us. Then, in a moment that felt neither entirely mine nor Baxter's nor hers, she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around Baxter's leg. Her embrace was so tight, so desperate, that I felt my own chest tighten in sympathy. Baxter froze at first, then sagged all the way to a sit, letting the alien girl hold him as though he were a guardian statue. She bowed her head, pressing her cheek to his warm, dark fur. In that instant, her fear gave way to something deeper: trust. Baxter lowered his muzzle until his cold nose brushed the top of her head, and the alien girl tilted her face upward. With a trembling motion, she pressed her lips to Baxter's snout. Jagged emotion tore through me as I watched. The moonlight illuminated Baxter's eyes. They were soft, trusting, grateful, and hers. Her violet eyes glowed with a tentative joy, as though she had found something she never dreamed possible. I stepped forward and knelt beside them, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might crack my ribs. I ran a hand through Baxter's ears, feeling the tension drain from his muscles. "She's okay," I told him softly. Baxter responded with a low, rumbling woof, and his tail began to wag so vigorously that the grass trembled. The alien girl lifted her head at my voice. Her eyes found mine, and she spoke a word: "Thank," though it was barely a whisper. I smiled, though tears stung my vision. "You're welcome," I replied. "You can stay here. We'll figure things out together." She hesitated for a moment, weighing her options, or perhaps simply absorbing the fact that she was no longer alone. Then, as though buoyed by some newfound courage, she rose onto her tiptoes and placed one small hand on Baxter's massive head. The dog leaned into her touch, closing his eyes as though savoring the warmth of her presence. I watched them, feeling a deep swell of something I could not name, pride perhaps and hope. The strange green glow in the sky began to fade, and night reclaimed its normal shade of indigo. The forest fell silent once more, as if holding its breath for what would come next. Finally, I stood and looked from Baxter to the tiny alien girl, who had found her way into our lives. "Let's get you inside," I said. Baxter rose, stretching his old bones and nudging the girl gently with his nose. It was as though he understood she needed guidance, that he would show her the way. Reached for the front door, pulling it open with a soft creak. The living room light spilled into the yard, cutting through the darkness like a beacon. Baxter led the way, heading toward the threshold. The alien girl hesitated for the briefest second, then followed, her luminous skin leaving a faint, glowing trail in the dim light. As the door closed behind us, I glanced back at the yard, the tree line now silent and still. I had no idea who she was, where she came from, or what she needed, but I knew the rest of the world could wait. Right now, this small, frightened girl and my loyal dog needed me, and I would protect them with everything I had. Inside, the scent of home, warm coffee, old books, and a hint of pine cleaner wrapped around us. Baxter settled beside the couch, and the alien girl climbed onto a low, cushioned footstool I pushed toward her. She curled into herself, looking as fragile as a porcelain doll. I knelt and unsnapped her jacket, revealing a form-fitting suit of silvery material that rippled with faint circuits of light. The suit hummed softly, a subtle vibration beneath my fingertips. She nodded, allowing me to gently tug off the fabric, revealing her slender limbs, glowing with an otherworldly luminescence. She watched me with violet eyes, her expression a swirl of curiosity and lingering fear. I offered her a blanket the color of midnight, and she wrapped herself in it like a child seeking comfort. Baxter pressed his muzzle against her side, and she reached out to stroke his fur, her fingers sinking into his thick coat. His tail thumped once, twice, then rested. For the first time since I'd met her, a faint smile curved her lips. I settled onto the couch beside them, taking a deep breath. Outside, the world spun on, unaware that a tiny alien girl had found refuge within my home, and that my dog, Baxter, had embraced her as family. The night stretched on, but in that living room time felt suspended. There were questions to be asked, about where she came from, how to send her back, and what dangers might lurk beyond our safe walls. Yet in that moment, amid the soft glow of her skin and the steady warmth of Baxter's presence, I realized something essential. Fear had given way to trust, and the bond forged in that fleeting instant would shape everything to come. The morning light filtered through sheer curtains, painting Liara's cocoon of blankets in soft golden hues. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor and watched her chest rise and fall in steady rhythms. All around us, the house was quiet, except for the gentle snoring of Baxter, curled at Liara's feet like a living guardian. His broad head rested on her makeshift pillow, and even in sleep, his posture was protective, as if ready to spring to her defense at the slightest hint of danger. Cleared my throat softly, and Liara's violet eyes fluttered open. She blinked against the brightness, then glanced down at Baxter, tracing the lines of his muzzle with her fingers. He half opened one eye, exposing the warm amber iris that spoke of trust and loyalty. Liara's lips curved into a small, contented smile, and she stretched in the blankets, revealing just how small she was. Barely half the size of Baxter's head. "Good morning," I said, voice hoarse from a night of mixed excitement and worry. I offered her a mug of warm milk, cow's milk, flavored with a drop of honey. She sniffed it curiously, then sipped. Her eyes widened in surprise at the taste. "Milk. Earth style," she murmured, her voice like a songbird's trill. "Sweet," I nodded. "I thought it might be comforting. You must be hungry." I glanced at the coffee table, where I'd left a plate of toast, jam, and fresh fruit. "Feel free to eat. Baxter and I will be right here." Liara sat up and scooted to the edge of the footstool, settling her feet on the thick carpet. She picked up a slice of toast with trembling fingers, taking small, careful bites as though each morsel was precious. As she ate, Baxter rose into a sit, watching her vigilantly. When she paused, he nudged her palm with his nose, silently asking if she needed more food. She dropped him a crumb of toast, and he accepted it gratefully before lying down, but keeping his gaze locked on her. Cleared my throat again, sitting on the couch so I could see both of them. "Liara, have you slept well?" I asked. She nodded, wiping crumbs from her lips. Strange dreams, green sky, stars dancing. She shuddered slightly, then added, "But I'm safe." I offered a reassuring smile. "You are. We'll figure out how to help you get home. But first we need to let some people know you're here." I gestured toward the front door. "I've already left a message with the authorities, but they'll need more information. I want you to stay right here with Baxter." Liara regarded me with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "Authorities and people with guns?" I exhaled. "Yes, they might have guns, but they're trained to keep you safe and learn about what you are. I promise I'll be right here. Baxter will be here. No one will hurt you if I'm here." Her eyes flicked to Baxter. He responded with a low, reassuring whine. Liara nodded, and a faint blush tinted her cheeks. "Okay," she whispered. I reached into my pocket and retrieved my phone. "I'll be downstairs. I've set up the living room, so it's just a few steps away." I rose and gently patted Baxter's shoulder. He stretched and padded behind me as I walked to the front door. Outside, the suburban calm had shattered. A handful of neighbors congregated on the sidewalk, whispering and pointing toward the house. Beyond them, a silver SUV with tinted windows and low-profile antennas was parked in the driveway. A man in a dark suit held a clipboard, speaking softly, into a headset. Several uniformed officers fanned out across the lawn, maintaining a careful distance. I recognized Captain Elena Reyes among them, the same woman who had hesitated when she first laid eyes on Liara the night before. As I approached, Captain Reyes stepped forward, her posture formal but her eyes betraying concern. "Mister, but you can call me Owen, right?" I offered. She nodded curtly. "Captain Reyes, we got your message. We're here to ensure the safety of everyone involved." She gestured to a scientist in a white coat, sliding on blue latex gloves as she approached. "This is Dr. Harold Kim, from the Department of Extraterrestrial Research." Dr. Kim gave me a quick nod, then glanced toward the living room window. "We'll need to secure a perimeter inside. I'd like to speak with the child." I cleared my throat, resisting the urge to protest. "If you try to separate her from Baxter, she'll panic. The bond between them runs deeper than you can imagine." Captain Reyes's gaze flicked to Baxter, who lay rigid now, ears pricked, eyes locked on the front door of the house. I gestured for them to follow me inside. "If you must, come, but keep your distance. We agreed last night that you'd conduct your tests here, in a controlled environment, with minimal interference." Reyes exhaled, her expression softening slightly. "Agreed. But if things go wrong, they won't," I interrupted gently. "Baxter will protect her, and so will I." Inside, the living room felt like a sanctuary. Liara remained on her footstool, her eyes flicking nervously between Baxter and the small gathering of officials and scientists at the door. Baxter sat in front of her, his head low, eyes unwavering. Dr. Kim approached carefully, crouching at a polite distance. Liara's gaze met his, and he offered a gentle smile. "Hello," he said in carefully measured English. "My name is Dr. Kim. I want to help you." Liara swallowed and gave a slight nod. She rose, stepping backward until the wall was behind her, clearly intimidated. Baxter made a soft whine, and Liara froze, raising a trembling hand to his head. He closed his eyes, inviting her to stroke his fur. She did so, brushing the coarse hairs between her slender fingers. The subtle vibrations of her touch seemed to calm Baxter, and in turn, her fear visibly lessened. Dr. Kim reached into his pocket and produced a small handheld scanner, a sleek oval device with a glowing blue lens. "This will be quick," he said softly. "I just need to read your vital signs." Liara's violet eyes widened, but Baxter let out a low, reassuring whimper. She nodded, stepping forward until she stood side by side with him. Dr. Kim touched the scanner to her wrist. Liara flinched at the contact, but after a quick beep, the scanner hummed off. Dr. Kim studied the readout on a small screen. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Heart rate stable. No sign of communicable pathogens. Her physiology, it's unlike anything we've seen. Captain Reyes approached, peering over Dr. Kim's shoulder. Is she contagious? She asked. Dr. Kim shook his head. No, in fact, her bioluminescent cells appear to be completely benign, but her body chemistry is extraordinary. Liara, may I ask, where do you come from? Liara's shoulders tensed. She pressed her hand to Baxter's head again, drawing comfort from his presence. After a long moment, she spoke haltingly. Planet, Sierra, ocean planet, far. Her accent was faint, melodic. Ship crashed. A tremor coursed through her small frame. Dr. Kim nodded, scribbling notes on a digital tablet. How long have you been here? She closed her eyes, recalling memories. Since twilight. She glanced toward the window. One night, I exhaled, a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. She arrived last night. Baxter discovered her in the yard. Captain Reyes folded her arms, gaze drifting to Baxter. The dog that, large and old, how did he survive the night? Most threatening wildlife in these parts would have attacked. I shrugged. Baxter knows how to handle himself, but something about her must have held his attention. Liara reached down and laid a pale hand on Baxter's shoulder. He leaned into her, eyes closed. Friend, she said. A hush fell over the room. Dr. Kim exchanged a glance with Captain Reyes before speaking again. We intend to protect her, but we need to bring in communications experts to see if we can repair her beacon, figure out how to get her home. Right now, our priority is ensuring she's safe and calm. I nodded. Agreed, but please, no more direct contact than necessary. Baxter and Liara need time together. They can't be separated. Dr. Kim tapped his tablet. Understood. We can work around that. We'll set up a lab station in the guest room next door. I'll position cameras so we won't disturb her. Captain, can we clear the neighbors from the yard? We don't want a crowd. Reyes nodded, moving toward the window. Officer Diaz, please escort the civilians out of view. The door opened, and 2 officers stepped outside. I heard muffled protests as neighbors were guided away. Moments later, the living room window stood clear of prying eyes, and I closed the curtains. The atmosphere relaxed. Dr. Kim stood, offering Liara a respectful nod. I'll leave you 2 to your breakfast. Please let me know if you need anything. He stepped into the hallway and disappeared. Liara exhaled a soft sigh of relief. She rose from the footstool and climbed onto the couch, curling into a ball, on my lap. Baxter settled across my legs, resting his head on her knees. I ran my fingers through her hair, still floating in its weightless dance, while she stroked Baxter's ear absent-mindedly. Neither of them said anything for a long moment, content in each other's company. Finally, Liara leaned into me. Thank you, she whispered, for trust. I smiled. You're welcome. You're safe here. She closed her eyes, and I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The previous day's adrenaline was wearing off. Yet, in her presence, fragile and luminous, my purpose felt clearer than ever. I would protect her, help her return home, and ensure that nothing came between her and Baxter. The afternoon passed in a strange harmony. I prepared lunch, sandwiches, and fruit, while Liara and Baxter rested on the living room rug. Through the closed door, I heard Dr. Kim's voice, calmly dictating observations into a recorder. Periodically, there were soft beeps from equipment, likely readings from Liara's beacon attempts. Captain Reyes came in once to confer with me, promising they were making progress on communications, but asking again that Liara remain undisturbed. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Liara stirred. Her violet eyes met mine. Owen, I must go home soon. I nodded. I know. Dr. Kim says they've borrowed a long-range transmitter from the base. They believe they can triangulate your home system within a few hours. Relief and sadness mingled on her face. She climbed onto Baxter's broad back, straddling him as if he were a living saddle. An instinct inherited from a life spent on ocean currents, perhaps. Baxter exhaled, his tail settling on the floor like a calm drumbeat. Liara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. He carried me through fear. Tears pricked at my eyes. He will be sad when you leave. Liara sniffed, then smoothed Baxter's fur. He is my family. She pressed her palm to his head. And you? You are too. I swallowed hard. The world beyond these walls felt heavy with expectation. Questions from governments, scientists, maybe the media. But right now, all I saw was Liara's trusting gaze and Baxter's unwavering loyalty. I made a silent vow to keep them together as long as possible. That evening, as twilight settled across the neighborhood, Dr. Kim knocked on the doorframe. We have a lock on our home coordinates, he announced, holding a tablet. Interference from the atmosphere is minimal. The rescue vessel should arrive within the next 6 hours. Liara braced herself, her glowing skin dimming slightly as anxiety flickered. She climbed down from Baxter's back and settled beside him on the floor. Baxter lay his head in her lap, offering silent comfort. I crouched in front of them, holding her hands in mine. The hum of distant engines drifted faintly on the breeze. Captain Reyes stepped forward, clearing her throat before speaking. We ask that you prepare her for departure. We'll set up in the backyard. Owen, Baxter, you may accompany her, but please let us handle the technical side. I nodded, though my heart clenched. Okay. Moments later, Liara climbed onto the sofa, carefully stepping around pillow and blanket. She wrapped her arms around Baxter's neck, pushing her face into his fur. He hesitated, sensing the imminence of change, then held still, letting her cling to him. His eyes were soft, but sorrow flickered in them. I knelt beside them, placing a hand on Baxter's shoulder while Liara whispered into his ear. Tears broke free from her eyes, drifting onto his fur. Baxter exhaled a low whine, his head dropping until it nearly touched the floor. He leaned into her, his body folding around her like a shield. Captain Reyes cleared her throat again. Liara, the vessel is descending. Please come with us. She stepped aside, gesturing toward the patio door where a small group of soldiers and scientists stood, silhouetted against the amber glow of floodlights. Liara glanced up, eyes wet. She hesitated, turning to me and Baxter. I love you both. Voice caught. We love you too. We'll never forget you. She took a deep breath, then rose. Baxter lifted his head, watching her with an expression that seemed too wise for any ordinary dog, an expression that said, "Please be safe." Liara stroked his head one last time, then bent down to kiss his snout. Baxter closed his eyes, leaning into her touch as though it were a benediction. With a final glance at Baxter, Liara walked toward the waiting group. I followed, my hand on her elbow as she stepped onto the back porch. The air was electric, alive with the hum of descending energy. Slash of violet light cut through the darkness as the rescue vessel's ramp extended to the ground. Two tall figures in shimmering suits stood at attention at the foot of the ramp, arms outstretched to guide her inside. Baxter sat rigid on the porch, his eyes locked on Liara. She approached him hesitantly, then crouched and wrapped her arms around his neck in a desperate embrace. He let out a soft whimper, his tail thumping weakly against the wooden boards. The finality of the moment pressed into my chest like a weight. Liara laid her head against Baxter's shoulder, pressing her tears into his fur as if trying to infuse him with every bit of her love. Baxter hugged her back, nuzzling her gently. For a moment, time stood still. Just the four of us. Liara, Baxter, Captain Reyes, and me, frozen in a tableau of farewell. Then a soft beep sounded from the ship. The hatch began to slide open with a hiss, revealing a warm violet glow that bathed the yard in unearthly light. Liara's rescuers stepped forward, gently placing a hand on her back. She rose, wiping one last tear from her cheek, and brushed a palm across Baxter's head. I will return, she promised in a trembling whisper. One day. Baxter let out a single bark, almost a reply, and pressed his nose to her palm. Liara hesitated, then turned and stepped onto the ramp. The hatch sealed behind her with a soft click. The vessel ascended slowly, the violet glow intensifying until it blazed like a distant star. Baxter stood entranced, people careful not to crowd him. I knelt beside him, wrapping an arm around his broad shoulders. "She's gone," I murmured. Baxter exhaled a shuddering sigh. His eyes, lingering on the spot where Liara had been, he let out a low, keening whine, the sort of mournful song only a soul-bound friend could sing. His sorrow cut through me like a blade. Captain Reyes placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "She's safe," the captain said gently. "And, thanks to you both, she'll make it back home." I nodded, though my voice felt stuck. "Thank you, Na, for respecting her bond with Baxter." Dr. Kim approached with a small device, a handheld scanner matching the one he'd used that morning. We collected her beacon's last coordinates before departure. Everything's in the log. It's possible to reach out if she becomes stranded. Again. We'll keep monitoring. Baxter whimpered again, and I rose, patting his head. "Let's go inside. She wouldn't want you to be sad." He lingered, drinking in the air, as if to memorize the scent of her departure. Then, with a reluctant nod, he followed me through the back door. Once inside, I closed it gently behind us. The living room was empty except for the faint glow of the horizon beyond the curtains. Baxter padded to the footstool where Liara had spent much of her time. He nosed at the blankets she used, and I knelt beside him. "She's gone, buddy," I whispered, brushing his ears. "But we'll wait for her. We'll be ready." He let out a soft woof, as if acknowledging our vow. Then he lay down, head resting on the footstool, eyes closed. I sat on the couch across from him, thinking of Liara, her glowing skin, her violet eyes, the way she had kissed Baxter's snout as though he were the most precious being in the galaxy. I wondered how the journey home would be, and whether her people would believe her story of a giant earth dog who had become her friend. I wondered if we would hear from her again, if one day a green shimmer in the sky would herald her return. As darkness deepened outside, I rose and gently turned on a lone lamp beside the couch, casting a warm pool of light over Baxter and the empty footstool. I retrieved Liara's silvery jacket from the chair, folding it carefully and laying it atop the cushion. I hoped that, if she returned, she'd find it as a reminder of this place, of a dog who loved her and a human who protected her. I sat down again and studied Baxter's sleeping form. Even in slumber, his loyalty was evident, one paw tucked beneath her blanket, as if still guarding a truth too wondrous for words. I reached out and patted him softly. "We did good," I murmured. "We did good." Baxter's tail thumped once, and I believed he understood. In that quiet living room, now a sanctuary of absence but also promise, we honored a bond that transcended worlds. The night settled around us, but neither of us was afraid. We carried within us the light of something strange and beautiful, and we would wait for its return, come what may.